Good morning. This is Dr. David A. Padgett. This is World Regional Geography 1010, Section 98A, Spring Semester 2021. And so I'm going to share my screen, jump right into things here. Okay, so we are winding down, getting close to the end here. Only 2 weeks of class left and then finals week, believe it or not. And so we're almost there. We're sliding into home. So this week, well, first I'm going to start off with the usual housekeeping. So you still have a few more minutes to get, well, you have a lot more than a few more minutes. The Women in Water assignment is due today at 11 o'clock a.m. Of course, you don't lose any points for 12 hours. So you still have till 11 p.m. before you lose 1 point every 12 hours. So please continue to work on that assignment. A couple of you all have asked questions about that. Again, the Women in Water assignment, and let me go to the student view here. There were some questions about this. But the Women in Water assignment, as you can see, is for only those of you who are not going to be teaching. So a pre-service teacher is basically an education major. But I know that there are some of you all who might be majoring in history or majoring in psychology, but planning on getting a teaching certificate. So you're not technically majoring in education, but you are planning on teaching. But in any case, if you are not planning on teaching, then you were to do this Women in Water assignment, or you should, you're still required to do it, still out there. So again, if you are not planning a career in teaching, you will do this assignment. So I know some people were confused about the pre-service terminology. So that's what that means. Pre-service means before service as a teacher. If that's not you, you would do this assignment. The rest of you all who, if you are planning a career in teaching, then obviously, well, you do the Globe assignment, only pre-service teachers. So a pre-service teacher is someone who's planning on being a teacher. Then you will do this Globe assignment. Again, it's due today at 11 o'clock a.m., but you get an automatic 12-hour grace period before you lose 1 point. After 24 hours, you'll lose 2 points. So it's just get it done. Get it done. Even if you turn in a day late, you still have the opportunity to earn an A if you do it very well. Either assignment. Again, if you have questions, let me know. Don't let any of these assignments slide by. That's why I give you extra time to get them done, so that we make sure you get as many points as you can in the class, so that you can get to 450. Remember, your goal is 450 points. That's your goal. Only way to get there is to keep working, keep turning assignments, even if they're late, get as many points as you can. Okay. Speaking of assignments, just getting to the assignments for this week. Well, you also have Article Review 7. It's due not till 11:30 p.m. Notice that some of you have really stepped up getting those article reviews in. There are plenty of instructions with the article reviews. Get them done. If you have any questions, please ask. Get them done. I know I haven't graded them yet. I plan on having everything graded by April the 19th at the latest. It was April the 15th, but I have some other things that have come up. April the 19th, I plan on having everything graded for everybody by April the 19th. And that should give you plenty of time to know where you stand going into finals week. Okay, so April 19th is the date that you should have everything graded. In the meantime, just keep working. For this week, there are 2 assignments. So again, this one should be pretty straightforward. There's writing assignment 5A, advancing early childhood education through mapping. Pre-service teachers only should complete this one again. So it's pretty straightforward. You'll watch this webinar, see if the webinar works. Should be, it's on my YouTube page. Just making sure the webinar works. Sit through these ads, of course. So again, skip ads. Okay, good. So notice the video is an hour long. This video is all about how, well, you see the title, Advancing Early Childhood Education Through Data and Mapping. This is showing how data and mapping can be used to improve early childhood education. It's pretty straightforward. Watch the video. And then in your 600 or more word essay, address these issues at A, B, and C. Make sure that you have all that content in your essay. And so that's the assignment. Write the essay as a Word document, upload it to the Dropbox. Let's see. Okay, so again, that's pretty straightforward assignment. This assignment is for those of you who are planning on being teachers. If you are not planning on being a teacher, then you will do writing assignment 5B, comparing Russia and CIS stands for Commonwealth of Independent States. So I'm going to get into the lecture in a few minutes. So you will compare Russia and CIS climate graphs, to Latin America climate graphs. So now we're looking at 2 somewhat different climate environments, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So this again is a writing assignment. You'll go here. This is for those of you who are not planning on teaching, okay? There are instructions for completing this assignment, but I will just kind of give you a little brief introduction now. So here's the assignment. So you'll select 8 cities according to the criteria below. So, 8 city climate graphs. So you go to this website, climatechart.net. It's very easy to use. And so here's climatecharts.net, very easy to use site that has point symbols at locations of various cities all over the world. And so in this case, you have to pick a climate graph from a city in Mexico. So you will, and this is described in the instructions, but the first thing is to find a city with the climate graph. And so you have to zoom in. So here's Acapulco. You've probably heard of that city. Now you have to scroll down. Hit create charts, excuse me. You get the climate graph. Now notice that you have to change the chart, change it to a bar chart. So that looks more like a climate graph that we've studied. And so you have the data, temperature data, precipitation data. I believe this is probably in degrees Celsius, yes, and millimeters. So just be aware of that. And so you have this climate graph here. And so we have the name of the city, in this place, Acapulco, absolute location of the city. You can either get it from Google Maps or it's right here on the climate graph, 16.83 degrees north latitude, 99.93 degrees west longitude. Let's see what else. Then the Kerpin Climate Classification, you'll go into the textbook. In this case, I believe this would be figure 11.2. Pretty sure that's what it is. Remember, and so, well, I'll just demonstrate it very quickly. Since we're here, still in student view, go to the textbook. And again, there are videotape instructions. So you're looking for the Kerpin Climate Map for, in this case, Latin America and the Caribbean. Yeah, 11.2. And so Acapulco, let's go back to that. So you have to kind of, I'm just making an approximate guess at where it is. So there's Acapulco, Mexico. Go back to the textbook. Let's see, it's just south of Mexico City. So, wow, that's my best guess is that would be an AW climate, otherwise known as tropical summer rain, which if you look at the climate graph, that's pretty much what you see. Oops, tropical summer rain climate. So here we have clearly a seasonal distribution of precipitation, where you have these summer months of the year with a whole lot more precipitation, and it just drops off to almost nothing during the winter months. So this is a clear wet season, dry season pattern, which is typical of AW climates. Let's see, that almost could possibly be AM, tropical monsoon. It's so extreme, but I don't see any AM up there. So yeah, it's clear it's an AW climate. And so it'd be AW, you would type in AW tropical summer rain if you were going to do that. You would type in AW tropical summer rain here, and then the elevation. You can either get it from a Google search, or the elevation is also made available to you right on the climate graph itself, 11 meters above sea level. So you'll do that for 8 climate graphs. One must be from a city, and sorry, one more thing. Paste the climate graph. Let's see. So that's pretty simple. Well, there are a couple of ways to do this. Let's see. PNG. Okay, so you can download it as a PNG file, and there it is. And then you can simply let's see, save as. I'm going to save it as, I'll say climate chart Acapulco. PNG, I don't think we have any other choices. And then I will just save it to, hard drive. And then you can just paste it or insert it into the document from the hard drive. Here it is. Insert. Don't worry about how much space you use up. We're not printing these out unless you're. And then, so there's your first one. And then paste a map of the city and environs below. When I say city and environs, what I mean is don't just zoom right in on the city. You can easily do this using Google Maps. And then we have Acapulco, Mexico. There it is. Probably best to use the satellite view so you get a clear picture of the city, you know, and its environs. So environs means just a general area, so that you can see the general area there. Let's see what's better. Yeah, clear this. So again, in order to get this, you can simply go to print screen, hit your print screen button, and it doesn't have to be pretty. You can just, unless you know how to edit pictures, just paste it right into your document like that. Of course, you probably don't want me in there, but, and then you do the same thing for the next one. Must be one city on an island, from an island in the Caribbean. Go through the same process until you have 8 climographs. Now you'll notice 4 of your climographs will be from Latin America and the Caribbean. The 4 others will be from somewhere in chapter 4 of the Bradshaw textbook, which is where we will go right now. So chapter 4 in the textbook brings us to unit D. And so chapter 4 focuses upon Russia and neighboring countries. And so essentially the countries that now belong to the this region, Russia and neighboring countries. And so here's the region, physical region. As you can see, this is a very large region of the world. This all used to be one country known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, otherwise known as the USSR. But as you can see, whoops. As you can see, the Soviet Union, and here we are on page 138, the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991. And so you might wonder, well, what does that mean, disintegrated? Now, I'll talk in greater length next week about the political geography of this region. But the country fell apart. It's the best way I can put it. If you can imagine, you know, we've had a lot of strife in the United States. We've had a lot of discontent, a lot of disagreement. And we had people try to basically take over the government on January the 6th. You know, at least that's what they thought they were going to do. Lots of different disagreements, but we're still one nation. But can you imagine if people in Texas got so upset at the election results that they decided they didn't want to be part of the United States? Can you imagine if maybe Mississippi and Alabama, you know, the majority population of those states decided they wanted to leave the United States? I mean, that's essentially what happened to the USSR in 1991. So they had republics, which are the equivalent of states, that basically said they didn't want to be part of the USSR anymore. I'm going to talk about that, why there was so much discontent, next week when we get into the political side. But the nation fell apart in 1991. So as you can see, the region is now known as the Commonwealth of Independent States, which is comprised of 12 countries. And so a lot of these countries, as you can see, if they were started in 1991, are approaching their 30th year of independence. Very young countries. If you look at it compared to other nations on the world stage, some of which can trace their history back thousands of years. So here is the physical region. It's a very large region, as you can see. And so we're going to look at this region from a physical and a environmental standpoint this week, starting right now. So I'll just click myself right out of the textbook. So let's look at let's go to figure 4.2. We'll start there. And again, here's that Kerpin Climate Map. The first thing that you should notice is that it is very different from what we observed at Unit C in Latin America and the Caribbean, which should be obvious, but you can see it here in this color area symbol map, this choropleth map, that I don't know, there are no A climates at all in this region, no tropical climates. It's not even in the map legend. But we do have a large presence of B climates here around the Central Asian countries. That's Turkmenistan and Tajikistan and Kazakhstan and others, and around this Caspian Sea region. And we get also here in Eastern Russia, more desert and semi-arid climate. Again, large swaths are covered by these D climates, these temperate climates, continental temperate climates. D lowercase c covers a large portion of the region. And then we have boreal climates, which are very harsh environments usually, that cover a major swath of land here. And of course, we have F climates. So this is a very different climatic environment that you will observe, or that we have observed in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so when you have all 8 of your climagraphs selected, then your next task is to write an essay focusing upon the climagraphs data. But what I really want you to do is kind of dive into the differences between the Russian climagraphs, the CIS climagraphs, and the Latin America and the Caribbean climagraphs. Now, in order to make this assignment more manageable, what I would do if I were you is look at extremes. So maybe find the climograph that has the widest temperature range in the former Soviet Union, and then find the climograph that has the widest temperature range in Latin America and the Caribbean, right? The temperature range is the difference between the warmest month and coolest month throughout the year. So for example, if we take a look at Acapulco, Mexico, notice the temperature range is very, very, very narrow. Let's see. So the warmest month for Acapulco throughout the year is 28.9 degrees Celsius. That's getting close to, that's about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty warm. The lowest is 26.2. So there's only a 3.7 degree Celsius difference between the highest temperature experienced all year in Acapulco and the lowest. So that's a very narrow temperature range. Let's just take a look at, just for curiosity's sake, let's go back to climate charts and let's pick out a city. Let's go to the instructions. It says one of your cities must be a city in one of the Slavic countries. So the Slavic countries include Ukraine and Belarus. Okay, so let's go back to the map. And so you can see here's Ukraine. So let's see. Here's Ukraine. Here's Kiev. Let's look at Kiev. It's Kiev. Create chart. And so now we have, wow, we can look at these side by side. But so if you notice, again, the temperature range for Acapulco, Mexico was only a couple degrees Celsius. For Kiev, the low temperature is 9.3 degrees Celsius. That's the lowest temperature on average throughout the year, I believe. Yes, 9.3 degrees Celsius. And it's actually minus 3.3 degrees Celsius, excuse me. So it's minus 3.3 degrees Celsius, and the highest temperature is 21.4 degrees Celsius. So you actually have a 24.7 degrees Celsius temperature range, which is, so if you want, if we roughly translate that, that's about a 40-degree Fahrenheit difference between the high and low temperature, as compared with Acapulco, Mexico, that only has about maybe a 6-degree Fahrenheit difference throughout the year. So you can see right away that there's a major difference between these two cities in terms of temperature ranges. Now you might ask, well, okay, well, why is that? So that takes us to this, this website, which talks about climate controls. Okay, and so okay, so looking at these two climate graphs in terms of climate controls, we will go to this website, I'm going to just copy and paste the URL instead of trying to click on it. That did not work too well. And so here we go. Here's the website. So here you have a climate controls website. So without getting into a whole lot of searching around, the climate control that is most responsible for the difference between the temperature range of Acapulco, Mexico, and Kiev, Ukraine is land versus water. And so the land versus water, water heats and cools five times more slowly than land. And so cities that are on the leeward side of oceans or very large bodies of water tend to have their temperatures modified somewhat. So it doesn't get as cold as it would be if it was farther inland, or the city doesn't get as hot as it would be if it got farther inland. Cities that are far away from oceans are able to get very hot and very cold, say like Kiev. And so I just showed you, if we look at where Kiev is on the map, you can clearly see that it is a place that is relatively far away from any ocean. This is if this is 300 miles, it's at least 900 miles away from any large body of water. So in your essay, you would perhaps say Acapulco has a temperature range of 2 degrees Celsius versus 40 degrees for Kiev, Ukraine. The climate controls that had the greatest impact upon the temperature ranges being so different between these two cities is perhaps land and water. Kiev is about 900 miles away from the largest body of water. Acapulco is right on the shore of the Pacific Ocean. And so therefore, the waters of the Pacific Ocean modify the temperatures of Acapulco, making for a relatively narrow or small temperature range. And that's how you could explain it that way. Also, another obvious climate control is between these two cities is latitude. So if we look at Acapulco is at only 16 degrees north of the equator. And so if we scroll out, you can see there's Acapulco, here's the equator, whereas Kiev is at a relatively, as Ukraine, clearly at a higher latitude. And so latitude is another climate control. And so you might also mention that the latitude has an effect upon the difference between these two cities in terms of their annual high temperatures, perhaps, or annual low temperatures. So after you get your 8 climate graphs, again, you should find the climate graph for Russia and neighboring countries that has the highest average annual temperature. So the average annual temperature is simply here. So it says temperature mean 27 degrees Celsius for Acapulco, Mexico, whereas the temperature mean for Kiev is only 9.3 degrees Celsius. That's the average temperature of all the months of the year. And so you might want to take a look at that, and you'll probably see that the latitude probably has the greatest influence here. Is a big difference in latitude in terms of mean annual temperature. Don't leave out precipitation. If you notice, look at the precipitation amounts in these wet months for Acapulco versus Kiev. And so you'll see that the precipitation amounts, the maximum precipitation in Kiev is about 74.3 millimeters of precipitation, as opposed to Acapulco, Mexico. You'll notice that some of those months, you'll see September has 300 millimeters of precipitation. So if you take it that there are about 25 millimeters per inch, that's over 10 or 12 inches of precipitation in 1 month. And as you can see, Acapulco gets twice the annual precipitation as Kiev. Acapulco has about 1,275 millimeters of precipitation, while Kiev only has 600. So in terms of completing this assignment, the key is to be organized. Okay, when you start sorting through your data, have a plan. Okay, get maybe 5 or 6 pertinent data points that you're going to compare. Precipitation. Let's look at the city that has the highest precipitation in the cities from Latin America and the Caribbean versus the one that has the highest in Russia and neighboring countries. What are the differences there? Then maybe look at, this would be an interesting comparison, because clearly you have in Mexico and Acapulco a seasonal concentration of precipitation, which is clear, versus having precipitation every month, as in Kiev. And you could just make that observation. I mean, maybe you might find that you might just do this with 1 or 2 climate graphs. This might be an other. Here are 2 climate graphs that have, very different climates. One is seasonal, one is not. And it might be difficult for you to get into why that is. Perhaps, why are these climate graphs different in terms of their seasonal distribution? In this case, you can just make the observation. Now, I'm teaching weather and climate this semester also. Now, in that class, we would get into, well, why are these 2 different? But right now, I just want you to make some really clear and basic observations. You might want to look at, in your essay, how many of your climate graphs are specific Kerpin climate classifications in Mexico, in Latin America and the Caribbean, versus the 4 cities that you picked out for the former Soviet Union. What you should find, well, I'm not even going to give that away because it's pretty obvious what you should find in terms of differences in Kerpin climate classifications. Okay, pushing through to the end. In your essay, you must also include 8 textbook references in your essay, and that could just simply mean mentioning where a body of water is in the textbook, or maybe mentioning something about climate in the textbook. Also, You might want to mention some cities if they're affected by weather hazards such as extreme cold or hurricanes or extreme heat or extreme dryness, so on and so forth. So this is a pretty straightforward assignment, I think. But if you have any questions, as usual, ask. Um, and then we'll see what we come up with next week. I think you should, I'm sure you'll do a good job with this one. But the main thing is have a plan, get your data as soon as possible, and then really think about what you're doing and what you observe as you write your essay. Um, so, so let's go back to this figure. So again, there's a wide range of climates in Russia and neighboring countries, which results in a relatively wide range of soil types and vegetation types. And so this is figure 4.4. And so this is a core plus map of different vegetation land coverages that are found in Russia and neighboring countries. And so if you notice from this X to this Y, that's a cross section. So if you imagine we're slicing the land along that line, and then we open it up, this is what we see. So towards the north, notice there's tundra vegetation. There's very few plants are able to survive in that very harsh environment here. But that's what's there. And then next, when we get farther to the south along the transect, we start to see some amount of wooded tundra, and then we get into this kind of brown area that gets us into the this let's see, pine and fir. So this pine, fir, larch region, which is all across here, in your textbook, the you know, the name that applies to that mostly is the taiga. So the taiga is this northern coniferous forest. It's very large forest that goes from Moscow to Siberia. This, all this area, this brown area, this green area, it's a very large coniferous, or otherwise known as needle leaf evergreen forest. It stretches across the region. And notice that the region in and around here with the deciduous forest and parts of the taiga forest represents a valuable region in terms of agriculture, whether it be logging um, or row crop agriculture such as wheat and what have you. And so when we move farther to the south, if you'll notice, we get into a steppe vegetation, which is grassland. That's this kind of bright orange here. And then we get even farther to the south, in and around the cast, excuse me, then around the regions to the south here, then you notice we get to desert and semi-arid vegetation, which again, vegetation that is adapted to regions that receive less than 10 inches of rain per year. And so the region is very vast and very somewhat diverse in terms of land cover and vegetation cover, as you can see. So so that's part of your reading assignment. I was getting into the physical environment of this region. And so one of the issues that we'll get into as we move to that southern region that I just showed you on the border of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, so these are two separate countries, is the Aral Sea. And so in reading, it's referred to as the Aral Sea contraction, also known as the Aral Sea disaster. And so the question is, well, what came together from a human standpoint and a physical environment standpoint resulted in this disaster? So the Aral Sea disaster is referred to, the link here also in your textbook. Essentially what happened was this Aral Sea was one of the largest bodies of water in the world. Let's go to ArcGIS Online for just a moment. I just want us to get an idea of the scope of what's happened here. So if we go here to map, here's the Aral Sea. Okay, so here we are at the Aral Sea, and we're going to zoom in and change my base map to imagery. Wow, so almost nothing left. So it's hard to get an appreciation for the extent of this disaster without understanding how large the area is. So here's a current view of the Aral Sea. Here is what the Aral Sea looked like in 1977. All right, then it started to shrink some more in 1989, and here's 2006, and then here is today. So let's use the measure tool just to give us a an idea of the context here. So it's miles. So from about one end of the Aral, what used to be the Aral Sea, to the other is really about 250 miles or so. About 250 miles or so. So let's look at that relative to some place that we're familiar with. Here's the Great Lakes. So here's Lake Michigan. So that's about 300 miles from end to end. A little bit larger than the Aral Sea. So can you imagine if over a course of about 30 years or so, Lake Michigan just disappeared. Maybe Lake Superior disappeared. I mean, that would be a notable disaster for us or anyone, really. So if you go back and look at these satellite images, you can clearly see what has happened to the Aral Sea over time. And it'll give you an idea of the extent of this disaster. So the question is, okay, well, what happened? Was this a natural process? Well, no, it was anthropogenic, human caused. So you notice we have two countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, sharing this resource. At least that's what they were supposed to be doing. And if you notice, we go back to the textbook. This is a very clear picture of the two rivers, the Sir area and the Amud area, that were feeding the lake. However, or feeding the Aral Sea. However, if you notice, there's these green color area symbols that represent irrigated areas. And so these irrigated areas are places where human beings pull water out of a river onto land so that their crops can be grown. Why is this so critical in this area? Well, let's see. Let's go to our climate charts. Let me get these out of here. And let's see. Let's find the Aral Sea. Let's find the closest city to the Aral Sea. Let's see. What's this? So this is wow, Kazali. I'll create charts. Let's see what we have here. Notice that, well, this city isn't as dry as I thought it would be. It's 120. It's 126 millimeters per year. However, if there are 25 millimeters per inch, that means that during the entire year, this place gets only about 5 inches of precipitation. It's clearly a desert. So this region in and around the Aral Sea is essentially not essentially, it is a desert region. So there's not a whole lot of precipitation falling out of the sky to feed this lake. So the lake, these rivers, the types of rivers that the Sir area and Amud area are sometimes called, are exotic rivers. And so that means that they flow through long distances of desert. They're not fed a whole lot by precipitation. As a matter of fact, if we go to figure 4.1, okay, it's not letting me in figure 4.1 for some reason. Okay, well, let's go to ArcGIS Online, Plan B. If you notice, the Sir area River and Amud area River actually fed from the mountainous region here to the southeast. So we have the change my base map here. to terrain with labels. And so we have, can clearly see now that these rivers are fed by perhaps snow melt. Here's the Tian Shan mountain range here that has snow melt. I'll change the base map. We might be able to see it, maybe perhaps. Yes, you can see the snow-capped mountains here, relatively high elevations. And so the meltwater is actually what feeds, or what used to feed, the Aral Sea. And on this image, this remote sensing image, you can clearly see this green area, which is where humans have engaged in irrigation-based agriculture, drawing water away from the lake. But that still might not answer the question for you. Okay, it still might leave you curious as to, okay, well, what happened? How did this disaster occur? Well, notice we have two different countries here, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, who are sharing or attempting to share this resource. That's the problem, is that the Kazakhs decided that they were going to use as much water as they wanted to without thinking about what the Uzbeks were doing. The Uzbeks were also using as much water as they wanted. And as a result, you get no water. And this is a concept called the sharing of common resources. That when you have two different groups of people trying to share one resource, or really, if we look at it globally, the world shares the atmosphere. Everybody, every country in the world shares the atmosphere, right? But has it been easy to get every country in the world to agree to mitigate climate change and global warming? Has that been an easy discussion? No, it has not been easy at all, because these nations are sovereign. You know, they have their own governments, they make up their own rules that don't have anything to do with another country. So within Kazakhstan, they might have their own internal rules for water preservation and conservation. And within Uzbekistan, they might have their own rules for water conservation and preservation. But there's no joint, well, maybe now there might be, but there should be a joint policy for sharing any resource that crosses political boundaries. But it's a difficult conversation because every country's needs are different. Maybe Uzbekistan is not as wealthy as Kazakhstan. Maybe Uzbekistan is a more agricultural, agrarian-based economy. Maybe they need to draw that water in order to survive. Whereas maybe Kazakhstan might have other options, maybe mineral resources, maybe oil and gas. So they might not need that resource as much. So they can be more conservative and say, let's not draw as much water, let's conserve. Whereas the Uzbeks might say, we can't do that. If we back off on drawing water out of the river that feeds the Aral Sea, we'll starve. So guess what? They're going to draw as much water as they can. At the end of the day, you wind up with no Aral Sea. And so this was a significant environmental disaster. That's why the textbook spends so much time on it. And if you can look at this image, think of that as Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, completely dried up. Think about how we would be affected by that as a nation, especially also with Canada also utilizing those resources as well. So the Arrow Sea disaster really brings about, or a pragmatic application of the concepts that we're learning about this region, in terms of it being a desert region, in terms of it, you know, being a BW climate region, and you learned a little bit of something about some of the water resources that are in the area, and the land cover, and so on and so forth. So we are going to continue from here on Wednesday. Just as a reminder, continue to work on the various assignments. Again, if you have not completed the Women in Water assignment, and I didn't see a whole lot of people that had completed it, remember, you still have lots of time to get that done, which means you have lots of time to get the assignments for this week done. The key is to do as much work as you can to get you to that magic number of 450. Okay, 450 is your goal. Again, I will have everything graded by next Monday, which is the 19th of April, which again should give you plenty of vision, or you give you a great idea of where you stand going into finals week. If you, whatever your midterm grade is, if you've been continuing to work, you should be fine. You should be fine. If you've continued to work, if you've let yourself slip, then you might want to be concerned about that. If you've maintained that same pace that you maintained at the first part of the semester, you've done the quizzes, and you've done the article reviews, and you knock out these writing assignments, you should be a-okay. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about anything at this time? Okay. Weaver, what's your major? Yeah, Maya Weaver.
Yes,
Your major.
I'm a poli-sci major.
Yeah, I sent you a job opportunity about a week ago. Did you get it?
Did you send it on Outlook?
I sent it through eLearn.
No, I didn't see it.
Okay, I'll send it again. All right. Okay. Well, let me see. Just hang on for a minute. Let me see if I can just pull it up just very quickly. Here's email sent. Let's see. Okay, this is my sent mail. Come on, where is it? Okay. That's not you. Oh, there's Maya Weaver. Man, it's the same job opportunity. But it's basically let me just